All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome back to Diversive Live, where we talk all things poetry and guide you in this process. There's me. Hello, my name is Jeff.
That was a that was a
You get a little
real
gay
a
up.
little
You
twang
get a little
in
gay
the
up.
in the
Yeah, we
okay,
got a little
okay.
gay up.
That I feel like that's like a little asterisk over the E. I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
I'm Matthias. Um,
We're good, man. How are you today?
I am I am doing great. I think not like amazing, but I'm doing great.
It's really late. Oh, hang on. One thing.
Huh?
One thing.
Oh wait.
This everything better. Now people are going to hear you. You just said that you're
Oh.
doing.
I just said the end is nigh.
You made it very clear to me that you're doing okay. Great now. Okay. Did something happen? Is it work?
Huh?
Is it work?
No, it's just you know what? Here's the thing. I think that it's like almost like the slam dunk competition. I think
Mm.
if I go into it and I'm like, man, today was amazing, then it's just like, I have then when I have a truly amazing day, I don't have anywhere to go. You know what I'm saying? When Dwayne
Mm.
Wade, gave that guy a 9 when he should have gave him a 10, what he was saying is, man, you could have done better. I
There's
gotta
more
have
to say.
I gotta have a barometer.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, this is my you know what? Today is like a s- a 7 because there's gonna be 8 days that are gonna be
Yeah.
great 9s and 10s.
In the words of your middle school Catholic school dance, leave some room for the Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? You gotta, you gotta have a little bit more.
Or else.
I feel that. I feel that. Um,
Like so, let's rate you got to rate your day. Well, a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the high, like this in slam
mm,
knowledge, 10 being the highest.
well, actually, pretty good. I mean, I'm tired. I'm tired, Slate guys. I'm tired. It's dark. It's Ohio. It's cold. We
Oh
got
yeah, it
we
snowed.
got our
It
first.
snowed.
No, I mean it's stuck.
Yeah.
It's stuck is a very strong word though. It's stuck for the first time.
It just, but it's just like stuck in the grass. Like this is not like the
Exactly.
snow that's like
Yeah.
on the streets. You know what
No.
I mean? Like I'm not like asking for it to happen, but this isn't the snow that's like on the street. This is snow that's like got into the grass, gave you a little holiday spirit.
Which was better than a couple days ago because it was raining. Because there's nothing worse than like December rain. Like 40 degrees and raining is like
Yeah,
this is like
no
no.
bueno.
Yeah. But there's a project we launched that's actually kind of tied into our topic for today. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is I've been looking at social media and people posting. A lot of people are posting about books that they have coming out. Books, check out my book, my book, my book, my book, my book. And I think a lot of times we're kind of missing the real focus. Like the focus isn't. Yes, you want to promote your book. I don't want to take that away. You want to get your book out there into the world, but we also want to be promoting ourselves in a way, and ourselves as writers,
Yeah,
and the things that we can give to other writers, because that I think is, in terms of long term growth and getting people to turn to us, I think that's going to have a great impact because the book is one thing, but the book is one aspect of an ecosystem that we can create.
yeah. It brings me back to a concept. I don't know if anybody out there has seen this little movie by this little known actor. His name is Denzel Washington. You might have heard of him.
It's going to be big one day.
He's gonna. I think he got some good chops. The guy, he just works on himself a little bit. Just kind of stays focused.
And
Gets a
steal some
couple.
scenes every now and then.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I want to see him pop on the screen a little bit more. On it personally, I want to see him kind of really devote himself to his craft. But yeah, this is movie American Gangster, and yeah, so it's American Gangster is a really good movie. And in the movie American Gangster, there's a scene where Denzel Washington's character is sitting across from um, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character. And I don't want to give too much away, but essentially we're talking about branding, right? So we're not so man, how do I want to describe this in a way that YouTube will not
Relatively.
will not essentially Denzel Washington is his character is the spearhead and the head of a brand, right? And he is the owner of a brand. And Cuba Gooding Jr. So essentially, in so many words, Denzel Washington essentially licensed Cuba Gooding Jr. to be able to sell the brand. But what Cuba Gooding Jr. was doing, he was diluting the brand, right? So he was essentially like, in order to have more of the product, he would like kind of dilute the product. But the problem is that the product had the brand on it. So what Denzel Washington was saying was like, whoa, hey, he had to come and see him at his place of work, and have a little sit down. And he said, well, hey, listen, you can sell my brand, but it has to be my brand. It has to, the brand name, Pepsi, it's a brand name. They don't have to know who Denzel Washington character is. They don't have to know who Cuba Gooding Jr. is. They don't know. They know that this brand, this right here, is strong. And so they can sell them anything with this brand as long as the brand is strong. And so kind of when we're talking about poetry, which you're not doing the same thing that's happening in American Gangster, but you know, if you're promoting your brand, which is you, which is, you know, hey, you are a good poet, you're a great artist, you're this is that and the third, then hey, it's not even just this book that I'm selling you. I'm selling you this book right now, but if I have a t-shirt to sell you later on, you're associating this t-shirt with this really good, high quality, great brand. You're gonna associate this maybe this note, like I sell notebooks for you to write your poetry in. Oh, you're gonna associate that with this brand, and really you can attach, you know, anything really high quality or that meets the quality of your brand.
Yeah.
Don't, if you're out there and you're a youth, do not watch American Gangster. Okay. But if you're watching this at this time of night and it's nighttime where you are and you're able to be watching this and you're old enough to watch, you should watch it at least for that scene. Go to YouTube and like watch Denzel Washington, Cuba Gooding Jr., American Gangster. Just watch for that scene. I think you'll appreciate what I'm talking about. For the research. Pepsi is a brand name. I could redo the scene for you now, but I'm not going to do it. Pepsi is a brand name, huh? Okay.
Because I think, you know, eventually you're going to move on from the book to some degree. I'm not saying don't like stop like promoting your book or things like that, but eventually you're going to have other things coming along, and if people are only attached to the book, there's less incentive for them to come to you. But if they're genuinely interested in who you are and what you're giving to them, and the book is just one aspect of that, I think it makes it more likely that they'll come to you in the future.
Yeah, they'll just keep returning to the well, because now they're like, whatever you put out, we trust. Whatever you put out, we like, and you just try to keep, you know, uphold that standard of high quality content or high quality product.
Which ties back to your first question. So you're asking about how I felt for today. So today we launched something new, which is exciting. So we're starting a little pilot program for something that could be something that's recurring in the future.
Now, I don't even know how to fly a plane, but I guess we're going to learn in the pilot.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's it.
You're right. What button is he going to press?
What if like there's a button, it's like a trap door? I'm like, oh, this is our 9th host. And everyone has a joke like that.
This is the 9th version of the
Oh my god.
And speaking of Project James, actually is one of the people. Congratulations to James. He's going to be part of our pilot program.
Nice.
AJ Ane's back.
AJ Ane. You flew a plane once. Nice. Fairly well accomplished. And they just let me get up there into the cockpit.
I just said I had license. Wow.
You'd be surprised at how lax these policies have gotten as of late.
I hate one flight. No,
and like when you fly with Spirit, like everybody just takes turns. Like everybody, this is she did it with Spirit. This is how you pay for your ticket. Everybody take a shift. You're gonna fly for 56 miles. Everybody individually.
Oh, you bought that cheap. You gotta fly yourself.
Aviation camp.
Oh man. Well, my brother did space camp, and I can tell you,
he went higher. He did that on the moon. So beat that. Okay.
So
wait, there's a space camp?
There's a space camp. It's down in we went, yeah, because we went down to Disney World, and then my brother went to space camp for a couple days. It was also
What do you do in space camp?
they give you like a little outfit and things. And I mean, this is definitely a better question for Greg because I did not go to space camp. I don't know if it's an NBA or anything like that.
I get what happens at space camp. You know, stays at space camp. It stays in space.
But it's like around there, like they have like a little, like they have like space centers and stuff like that. So I guess there's like a museum tour, and they have like fake space shuttles and stuff.
It's like this extraterrestrial, but he's just like terrestrial. It's like I didn't add the extra. I just stayed. I stayed. I'm basically aviation camp.
Meanwhile, James out here saying he saw snow once. It was cool. Yeah, it's definitely cool. No, I'm a big snow person.
This is the most sophisticated snow person we've ever made. We just made one wish, and here he is. He just became a real guy.
How the stream's going to be.
The end of Frosty the Snowman is a terrible tragedy. It starts off really happy, and then he's like not magic anymore.
Okay, here it is. Now I can show it. Now I can show it. Oh, okay, so we're starting a new project. This potentially, speaking of services, this is potentially a service that we're going to offer in the future. Because I've been kind of thinking about for Diverses, like what's the direction I want the platform to go. Because eventually it's going to need to have something that can help sustain it. And I think this might be potentially one option. I want it to be several things, but I think this could be one thing. So we're starting with what I'm calling the Chatbook Chamber.
You gotta do it.
Is it maybe like a bang? We have these
Is
it like I can do this? We're starting the Chatbook.
That doesn't feel like a chamber.
Okay, is it more of a warning? It's the Chatbook Chamber.
Okay. I get behind that.
You guys let us know what you
for now. That's our pending Chatbook Chamber sound.
No one's in it right now because I know who is a plan. We'll talk about the process behind that. But basically what's going to happen is I've invited 4 poets who I can describe the process now. So basically what happened is I posted a message like, hey, anyone who's interested, I'm thinking of creating like a peer-reviewed chatbook pilot program that's free. And if you're interested, let me know. And people sent me their email addresses. And this goes back to some of the strategies that we talked about before. Once you have an idea of how many people are applying, you can start getting an idea of how many seats you want to make available. So based on what I saw, I was like, okay, I think we can get maybe about 4 seats. And so once we did that, I sent out a message to all the people who expressed interest, and I said, hey, at 5:00 today, keep an eye on your email because then I'm going to be sending out the updates. And 5:00 came out. I sent out the update, said, hey, if this sounds good and you want to take part, reply. And then over the span of really about 2 minutes, the people sent me emails, and I was like, okay, you are the 4, because there were definitely way too many more people expressed interested in spots, which is cool. So we have our 4. So congratulations to our 4. James is one of the 4. And basically what we're going to be doing peer reviews of chapbook manuscripts. So these are people who already have a chapbook manuscript together, but want to get some extra set of eyes on it. And so we're going to, for every poet, it's going to have different people looking at their work. And so it's a 3-week program with 4 poets. That means week 1, like if we have like poet A, poet B, poet C, poet D, things like that. So poet A will look like poet B's work, poet B will look at poet C's work, poet C will look at poet D's work, and then we'll just kind of cycle through during the 3 weeks. So then everyone gets 3 eyes on their manuscript. So then even if you don't necessarily agree with the person's comments and things like that, the intention is that you at least can identify some common areas of strength, common areas of weakness. You can feel more confident being like, okay, lots of people have looked at this, and because sometimes, like, especially like in our own like friend groups and things like that, people I'm not saying this always happens, but sometimes when you're giving work to friends, you're maybe not always saying the things you want to say. That's not how I operate, but some people do.
Yeah.
I've seen it just from how people get feedback. So this is a way to get kind of more objective feedback from other people who aren't familiar with your work, and things like that.
Yeah, and it also kind of eliminates some of the blind spots that kind of happen in friendships, right? So like you can be reading somebody's work, or you could be even listening to somebody speak, and because you have a level of familiarity with them, you might, give them a kind of either a measure of grace that somebody that's just not coming to their work wouldn't give them.
Yeah.
And you might imply some things to their work, or you might have a level of background that informs you of things that their work is not doing by itself. So yeah, just having that space to be able to review with people that aren't familiar with you, that aren't like your best buds and best pals, it really, I mean, I would imagine after the pilot program, or during the pilot program, I guess the experiment shall be sorted out, right? But I mean, in the past, when it comes to like that, that review process is typically really beneficial.
So this is basically what it's going to look like. So we're using Discord. I mean, Discord is not my favorite format, but I think for what we're doing, I think this can actually work pretty well.
How did you choose between Discord and Datcord? I'm gonna go ahead and boom. I'll. And I had to do it. I had to try it, but when I heard it, I peer reviewed myself, and I said that was terrible for me to say.
So basically, what's going to happen? I've created a little model channel. So in the model channel, people have their own. Basically, I've set it up kind of like a forum, so people will be able to put up all their poems. So like if you have 20 poems, 25 poems, you'll be able to put all them up, and then you'll be able to, for the poems that you're reviewing, you'll be able to leave notes for everybody for each individual poem. You can also give suggestion like, hey, if you're trying to get down to like 25 pages, maybe this is a poem to cut. This is a poem to keep. Maybe this should be your first poem. Things like that. So each person can leave notes. So then by the end of the 3 weeks, everyone's going to have lots and lots of notes, hopefully, for each of the poems that they have as they make their decisions for revision. So really, the goal is by the end of the 3 weeks that all of the members have a manuscript that maybe still needs some editing, but that they at least have a greater sense of direction for what's working versus what's not working for the manuscript. So that's the goal. We'll see how it goes. James mentioning they are familiar with Discord. That's good. Discord's not. Have you used Discord before?
I have.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I did
Slack. I mean,
it feels just like Slack. There was like this photographers kind of meetup that's like in Columbus, and one of their ways that they would like schedule and like do like locations and stuff like that was through Discord, and I used it, and I feel like it's fairly user friendly once you kind of jump into it and kind of orient yourself inside of it, but like you just got to take some time to really kind of dig in.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes me like. I get it now, and there's a million other things I can do with it that I'm just like, look, we're just gonna kind of do bare bones. I think for what we need, we don't need any like the super complicated, like we don't need like bots and things like that. But fairly simple. But I think once you get over the initial shock, it's okay and navigable. But it's not. I wouldn't say it's the most user friendly thing. Like if you've never used it before, I could see it being a little intimidating. But again, we're going to try to keep it simple for everybody. But yeah, so that's our plan for our pilot. And James also mentioned at Discord. Yeah, popular for game. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where Discord probably really grew the most, just from like the gamer community and things like that. Though I think you're starting to see other people kind of branch out now, because I think like again, like Slack, I think has like a negative, like people associate with work. Oh, I use Slack for work. Like you're not going to make a Slack group for your friends.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a Slack group. That's a good idea. Jeff, expect a Slack from me tomorrow morning, Monday, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
I'll not respond after 5. So that's the program. Another thing too is that this is something that I think, yeah, I mean, you could always like do something like this with your friends and stuff like that. But I don't. One of the things that I've seen a lot where I think this could really be an appealing service in the future is that one, you're working with people that you're not necessarily familiar with, but that who
Mhm.
are also have a similar goal to you. So there's almost like this kind of seriousness that I think happens.
Yeah.
And there's also that degree of separation because you may or may not know the person that you're working with, but again, you're working towards a similar aim. Whereas like if you just kind of get friends together and say, hey, like, we're gonna make like a writing group, those things are really hard to sustain. Like the like
Yeah.
in like an informal writing group, I think it's one of those things that everyone really likes the idea of, but I think it's also one of those things that people have been a part of in the past. But to keep a writing group, especially like an online writing group together after like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, that's really hard.
Yeah, I think that you have to have kind of an additional goal outside of like uh, for all the writing groups that I've seen, the ones that really are sustained are the ones that you have a community that is outside of the writing group, that is like the writing group is like an appendage to,
Mhm.
as opposed to being like this is the writing group, like the thing that we do is write in this group. I don't know the reason for that, to be honest. I think any of the writing groups or any of the groups of people that I'm like, okay, this either people that I regularly write with or also people that I'm in community with
Mhm.
already.
Mhm.
I think that feedback in those spaces is both is welcome, but it's actually, I think it might be a better scenario where the feedback is not coming from people that I would typically see every day or I would see like all the time, right?
Mhm.
Because these are now you're getting feedback from people that are more closely representative of your probably the consumer of your work. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Mhm.
it would be great if all your friends and family were the ones that were buying your book, but like in order for you to build your business the way that, or build your poetry in a way that is scalable, then
Mhm.
it has to be people that are coming to your work. There's going to be people that are coming to work fresh.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that's something that you are looking to do, then kind of having this like kind of like this small sample size of people like these, you're getting three people that are people that maybe have never read your work before and aren't really invested in being like, well, hopefully we get to go out and eat pizza later on today or something like that, like, or like maybe like these are people that are like, I would imagine they're going to be as like uh, not jerks, you know what I mean, with feedback, but it's going to be more to the point of like they're going to be like honest and transparent with what they're
Yeah.
seeing, and that's something that as good of friends as you. I mean, to be clear, there's some kind of I would say kind of degree of friendship or kind of layers of honesty that people would give you because they're such good friends that aren't necessarily
Mhm.
productive to you as an artist, right? Because it could be because you're so familiar with their work and the kind of feedback they're giving you is really kind of colored in by maybe what they want from you as opposed to what is quality writing or quality production as an artist. And so kind of in all aspects, having another eye on your work, having three additional eyes on your work that are not super familiar with your work or are not people that are invested in your personal life as much as your artist growth is really good.
James, bring it up. You never. I want to make this real dramatic. You never get honest feedback from friends or family.
That's a really interesting kind of way to wait, like, because you're spacing and that's it was really you never.
Never.
Because I would have read it. You never get. No, you never get honest feedback from your
Nah,
friends
you
or
gotta
family.
emphasize the never. It's the never that has to wait.
Uh,
Not once. Not ever. Never.
Or you never get honest feedback from your friends or family. So it's like letting you know, like, hey, it's your friends, but your family especially.
And it's that pain, agony.
And then it's just
Them will let you down.
your cries and you going into the corner and eating an entire family size bag of Doritos, and you're not a family, you're just a person.
Those were good memories. So
let's go. Only all those nights as a youth at the dinner table editing poems
when I was a youth,
eating bowls of porridge, crying over my stanzas. Why won't you love me?
The other thing too is that I think a lot of times when you join a writing group, there's not necessarily an end goal. Like a writing group, it's just the infinite thing. And this is something not directly. So I teach English. I have a couple different groups. James breaking it up. You never get
on his feet. You never get on his feet.
James,
that's solid. You understand.
So I have a couple of services that I offer for my teaching business where I've actually made some similar sorts of tweaks to, because it's something where we meet every day. But I think for some people that works perfect. But for some people, it's like, all right, if I'm meeting every day, what's the end goal? You know, like, where am I going? What am I doing? Like, yeah, I'm putting into practice, but I don't know where I'm going towards. Like, it's like I'm getting in the car and just driving, but I don't know where I'm driving. I know I'm moving, but I don't know in what way. And so I've added some things to kind of give some direction to people, like giving like specific goals for each month and things like that. And I think,
can you talk about like the benefit to that as well, just as far as like kind of having that direction? Because I think that point is something that a lot of people kind of miss with some of these, like their writing groups, or really just some. There's like people that like, you know, they'll have like poetry groups in general. I'm like, okay, well, how do you measure, you know what that forward movement is, or why is it important to have a metric for that?
You know, I mean, I think everything we start has an end date. Everything,
because you'll die.
Among other reasons, that is one fact. But you know, like when you start working at a job, the assumption is that you're going to stop working at that job. Or when you like start writing a book, the assumption is you're going to finish writing the book. Everything has a culmination. And I think when we're in a writing group and you're just like, oh, I'm submitting another poem, I'm getting another feedback. I'm submitting another poem, I'm getting more feedback. It's endless. Like which is helpful and productive, but I think having an actual destination in mind can help you piece together not only a large goal but also the smaller goals. I think that like the infinite window sort of stuff, I think that can work. Like for me, that doesn't necessarily bother me, but that for some people you can lose motivation over time because you just don't know. It's like, for instance, it's like studying a language or something like that. It's like, how do I know where I'm actually as good as I want to be? And it's really hard to gauge. But this is why, for instance, in education, we have classes, right? Like, for instance, you finish with a degree. You know, it's not like if I get a marketing degree, that doesn't actually mean I know everything about marketing, but it does mean that like I've spent a specific amount of time on this. And for that, I get the piece of paper.
But like in karate, you get belts.
You're correct.
So
yes. Yes.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to be like, oh, I'm a yellow belt, I'm like, well, I'm a turquoise belt.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting to say that too, because that we also use those sorts of things as status symbols. We use those as symbols of prestige, among other things. You know, so I think there is value to this. We put value on things that have a start date and an end date. And I think that
shows your level of proficiency.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that a project like this, where it's like this is a 3-week period. You know what you're committing for from the beginning. You join a writing group, you have no idea what you're committing towards.
I think, maybe like you're committing towards a community, but like if the community
Mhm.
doesn't have a goal, then it's just like, okay, I'm moving in, but okay,
Mhm.
were we all doing something here? Like what was our
Yeah. I
purpose?
mean, in fact, you even have to ask that question, right?
Yeah.
Even with a, let me rephrase, like I think like having this specific goal and time set, be like, you know what? It makes things also kind of feel more manageable, and I think it makes you easier to kind of build your life around. Because it's like, you know what? Okay, 3 weeks. The time commitment's going to be somewhat intense because basically you're going to be looking at three different manuscripts, from three other poets over a 3 week period. It's kind of a lot, you know. But at the same time, it's not like a 10 week period or like a 20 week or a year long. It's like, I can do this for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So like you can block that out so like you can stay focused for a specific amount of time and then take breaks. It's the same thing with like with a job or things like this. This is why vacations are super important. This is why we have the weekend. It's not, you don't work unless you're me. Like, you don't work every single day. Like, you have you have days off or things like that. Like, we have, everything has cycles. And I
Yeah.
think that this sort of project allows you to budget your time, work towards a specific goal, know when that goal is met. It's also a goal that is very practical, because what's the goal? The goal is to read each other's poems and leave feedback for everyone's poems by the end of the 3 week period. It's not like a, I'm going to write the best poem ever, or it's not about even necessarily like, I'm trying to impress this other person with my work. It's like, no, I'm just trying to read and comment. It's very practical, something you can do. It's objective. It's like, did I do that? Yes. Did I do that? No. So I think all of these things make it easier to track. um James mentions as well, 3 weeks I can do, 6 to 8 might have been worried about, exactly. um
And but also gives you that barometer that you can make that decision and kind of process what both the commitment is, but then also like kind of how your life can fit around that commitment.
mhm,
Because if you're just like are going to join a group, because here's the thing, because like it's like, let's say 3 to 4 weeks. Like you say to somebody 3 to 4 weeks, this is going to be 3 to 4 weeks of your time and whatever else that kind of entails as far as like your effort. But it's 3 to 4 weeks now. So you told somebody this thing is just infinite, then maybe they just miss it, right? So I mean,
mhm,
like
mhm,
we talked about this a little bit when it came to like open mics, and when we came to like seasons, maybe for open mics, there's or for like just shows in general, right? If you knew for certain that this open mic or this event only was going to take place 10 times, right? And not only was it going to only take place 10 times, like the dates for those 10 times were already set, then like maybe you make the effort, especially if it's an event that you really really like. Maybe you make the effort to make 5 or 6 of them, or whatever
mhm,
like that. But if somebody was like, okay, this is the one time, like this is the one time
mhm,
this year that this event will be happening, and if you want to catch it again,
mhm,
it'll have to be happen next year, then it's like your prioritization goes a little bit high, goes a lot higher.
mhm,
But then also it's like, because you're able to circle in like all of my efforts, everything that I want to do, I can arrange my life around this one event.
mhm,
And so just kind of expanding that out to this concept here. If it's, a 68 week program, depending on your level of commitment, depending on what it is, and depending on what effort you deem is enough, or is worth putting into it, like 6 to 8 weeks can be like a really quick amount of time. You
mhm,
might be like, this blew by really really quickly. Or if it's like, if it's like a prison, if it's like you're going to jail, like somebody says 6 to 8 weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm in there forever. And so it just
mhm,
kind of depends on contextually what you're putting that time
mhm,
span around, but then also it being able to set your expectations around a lot of different factors. And so you could be effort, it could be resources.
mhm,
But in this case, when we're talking about time, it's
mhm.
always best to be able to do that. Yeah.
It also allows for certain aspects of it to feel a lot more special. Like, again, if you have like you go into shows, like if you're doing like a 10 week run of a show, you know, that first show is exciting and the last show suddenly gets a lot of weight as well. It's become something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's just continuous, it's harder to celebrate, you
Yeah.
know?
That's true.
Um, the other thing too is that, so right now we're doing the pilot. So some of the things, in case you're James wants to go to jail. James
I get a lot of.
yeah,
I don't, James. I don't know if you've been to jail. Not a lot of people were like, "Dang, I'm getting like finally I can get into that novel I've been trying to write."
Writing retreat or jail. Jail is free food.
It is free food. Great gym. Okay.
So another aspect of this. So this is the pilot. And the pilot is our opportunity. So some of the obligations I've asked of them. James says it doesn't work that way.
I think you should give it a shot, James. Like after this program, after the 3 or 4 weeks of this pilot, I think afterwards you just do like a light. There's not even a felony, a misdemeanor, something that kind of gets you like a couple months, 60 days in jail, just to see what that's like.
Yeah.
There's that show.
Pay the bail. Yeah.
There's like a show. Like 60 days in or something like that. I think it's like literally like you spend like 60 days in jail, but then like nobody inside of the jail knows that you're part of this thing, and like it's like a real intake. They really do it. To my knowledge, like this could be all movie magic.
Jail, probably.
Some of the stuff that goes on in there, it's not the maximum. It's not like that. It's definitely not that. But it's some of the stuff I don't know what it looks like inside of a white collar, like just a club. What is it? Club Fed? Is that what they call it? Like I don't know what it's like necessarily. Like I wouldn't like wherever Martha Stewart went. Wherever Martha Stewart spent her time, because she kind of came out a little bit cooler, a little bit more laid back. And I'm like,
that legit actually probably helped her career.
You think? I don't know.
I think it legit helped her career.
I think it
gave her another level of cred.
Another level of cred. Oh, Martha Stewart did insider trading. Let's. I really want to know how she's going to redirect her for you.
Let us know your thoughts. Going to jail, help or hurt Martha Stewart? I'm arguing.
Like Martha Stewart's watching this right now. She's like, I will find y'all both.
So some other obligations asked for the pilot. So the pilot's free because the pilot's completely free. What I've asked for is basically at the end of it, I'm going to be giving everyone a survey. I'm also going to be requesting a testimonial. Some other things I've requested, I've asked all the members to give me a headshot, give me a bio, so we can make some promotional stuff. Make this a thing. Let people know that this is really, really special. Which is, again, if you just have like a writing group with your friends, you don't see that sort of work. You know what I mean? You don't really see that. Whereas this is something that I think we could really make it something people want to be a part of.
Yeah.
But not everyone can be a part of. We didn't have room for everybody. I got way more. We filled up space in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, I had all the people I needed. And these are people I've not met in person. Like James, cool. We've interacted several times. We had a call, but these are not people I know in person and stuff like that. But that are interested in what we're doing. And the other thing too is that for us, it's giving us a lot of it lets people know more about us, like the verses, like the brand, like it lets people know about the work we're putting in, so this is again like a service we can do. So we do the pilot, we do the promotion, we really put up the poets that are in it, we show the work that we're doing. It elevates them, and it elevates the work that we're putting in. So then in the future, depending on how the pilot goes, this could be a monthly service. Like every month we start a new cohort. Maybe you pay like $20 a month and then you get access to this readership and you're spending time with this work. Man, if I put like this, like for instance, like the Watering Hole, which is a retreat, they have like a manuscript retreat, which is way more crowded and things like that. It's in person. You're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for this thing, I think. But at the same time, like with something like this, you're still, a 3-4 week period, and you're walking out with a manuscript that's gotten, each piece has gotten feedback from 3 different people and things like that. For a chapbook, before you're even submitting the contests, there's a lot. Like,
yeah, the value can't be kind of understated too, because it's like, if you are, let's say you're an architect, right? So like, let's take it out of the world of poetry, and let's just say you're an architect and you're somebody who's like, okay, I'm drawing up these plans for this structure, and I want to make this structure, the the best design and the safest structure that I've ever built in my entire life. And I mean, maybe it's worth it to show people that are, just people invested in, looking at the building. Maybe the people maybe just invested in investing in the building and things like that. But people who I think would give kind of the best feedback and kind of what is kind of mirrored in the program are people that are also trying to make the best building. They're trying to make the safest structure and the most interesting structure, right? Because now you're getting feedback from people who are kind of in the mix, who are in this process, kind of transition like a little bit even to like, let's say, like basketball, right? Like in the world of basketball, there's like a lot of the people that are in the league that in the off season they're working out with each other. Like there's these superstars, and they're like, okay, but I went. They're talking about like over in the off season, I went to work out with James Harden. I went to work out with this person. I went to work out with this person, and they're people that are gearing up to perform that the best that they can by training with guys who have people who have skills
Hmm.
and who have talents in their field that they're looking to benefit from and to help kind of sharpen their work and what they're doing. So whatever analogy that you choose, even if you want to just take a pilot, right? Even if you're just flying a plane, but like whatever kind of analogy you want to use there, it's being able to not only just like learn but also get active live feedback,
Hmm.
but also eh, being getting active live feedback. But there's something really beneficial and really unexpectedly like edifying about being in the process of getting and giving feedback,
Yes.
right? So
Hmm.
like not giving feedback is also going to help sharpen you, because there's a lot of things that I think I don't really think about even my own work. Like there's like I don't even think about my own work until like I'm looking at somebody else's work and I'm thinking it out. Like because a lot of times you're not applying the same rubric and the same thought process to your own work that you do to somebody's
Hmm.
work that you just put fresh eyes to. So now you can be like, man, like this is what I liked about it, this is what I didn't like about it. And you're giving this like really open kind of critique and notes that now when you put your eyes back onto your own work, you're like, oh, like some of the
Right.
rules that I would encourage somebody else to implement into their work. I Maybe there's better ways for me to implement it into
Mhm.
my work. So yeah, being in that rhythm of both giving and getting feedback is a really beneficial
Mhm.
rhythm to be in.
Yeah. Also builds up your own network with other writers and things like that, because they're spending significant time with your work.
Yeah.
Um, and then in addition to that, with the feedback stuff, what's the saying? Like the feedback you offer to other people is typically the feedback you need to hear for your own work. It's also an aspect of the process that I'm fine with like writing poems, but I often find that I get more enjoyment from helping other people with their own work and like
From
editing other
critiquing
people's work.
poems. I
Yeah.
get more enjoyment from tearing other people down.
It's the feel of the poem in
Why
my
read my
hands.
work when I can destroy yours?
I just find it to be really like I enjoy that process. I think it helps me become a better reader, like the more and a better writer. Like the more I can like help people kind of workshop their own pieces and things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, and that's also just good advice generally. I think people say it all the time, but like if you are looking to create work in your field, you should be intaking work in your field. And that really goes for anything. If you're like, man, if you're a filmmaker, I know for me here lately, it's been like, man, I really want to make films, right? So like I've been watching short films like nonstop.
mhm.
And listening, like there's some short films that I listen to. I listen to the audio for them just so I can really understand like soundscapes for them. And like if you are, again, if where we're bringing it back to poetry, if I'm a person who I wrote 10 poems and I'm writing, poems every single day, but I couldn't put my mind to the last other person's poem that I've read, or like any poems that I'm reading or anything like that, then the quality of your poetry is going to suffer, because it's also you're kind of locking yourself in, man, what would they say in Marvel? Like you're kind of in one dimension when there's a multiverse, right? So
Mhm.
that like your poetry, your work is this one world that you're only benefiting from the products and the byproducts of that one world,
Mhm.
right? But you know, if that if somebody else is out there and they're benefiting from, you know, their Doctor Strange, you know, before they fight Thanos, he's like looking through all the universes, right? And he's like able to get in all the knowledge from all these other universes, all these other people's
Mhm.
universes around him, to be able to inspire and kind of create things in a different way, and create solutions. Like maybe there's a solution for your work that like you find in the mechanic of somebody else's work, right?
Mm.
Like I'm not talking
Mm.
about like plagiarism, like don't copy their work, right? But I'm talking about like the mechanics of their work, like
Mhm.
how they're phrasing things, how they're building things out. You might be like, man, that's something
Mhm.
useful that I can apply to my work. So
Mhm.
that's, which is again, it's you're kind of getting a sample size of that here, because and it's like a more kind of direct, less ethereal lifestyle, you
Mhm.
know, version of it, because it's a concentrated, you know, really practical way of doing it.
Mhm.
But it's just to say that, you know, in the same way that it's incredibly ultra beneficial in the long term overall, it's also, you know, it's going to be really beneficial in this more precise
Mhm.
nature, which is, hey, I'm reading other people's work, I'm intaking other people's work, I'm understanding their processes, and I'm understanding like feedback that I'm giving them. Like I'm learning from feedback that I'm giving,
Mhm.
right? And then, you know, your work is going to grow.
Yeah. So I think this is just an example of one project we're doing. We've done another thing that we did too. Um, not really like a service related. One of the things we did on Threads, we did what I call like an asynchronous open mic, because on Threads you can send audio files, so people send audio
Yeah.
files of themselves reading their work, and we just kind of compiled everyone and put that out. And we put that on YouTube, and then people get really excited. They're just like, "Oh wow! Like you put this is my poem on video with all these other people." So then, like, you know, you can spend like as you're eating lunch, you can listen to everyone's piece. Because one thing with like Threads is like, yeah, I mean, you can find all the audio files there, but they're kind of all over the place with like the replies. So just have everything in kind of one spot compiled.
Yeah.
People find helpful. And then we could also turn that into a podcast version as well. The big thing here is that I really challenge you as a writer to think about what is the thing that's on brand for you. And I know a lot of posts don't like the word brand. So if you don't like the word brand, like what is the thing that captures what you're about that would also serve other writers? So, for instance, for us, the verses, we're about professional poetry development. So, the things we're doing, we're trying to give you opportunities to not only develop your work and your craft, but also help you develop ways to approach your writing from kind of like a financial perspective. So, that's something that is overarching everything that we do. One of the things that can be helpful when you're thinking about this too is trying to decide what are you against. So for instance, we have our full poet logo with the eating fish, you know, because we're full poets. So more specifically, we're full poets against starving artists. I feel like that's kind of our statement. Full poets against starving artists.
We're gonna win because we just ate. So
We done ate. We done ate. We full. We
we're definitely
full.
gonna win that.
So asking yourself, you know, so like with your own writing or how you want to approach your own writing career, what are you against? And actually, I posed this on Threads. I asked people like, what is your writing against? Or like, what is your writing career against? And actually got some like interesting answer. Like some one person, I think it was No Television, I think that's the name. They were saying that I'm gonna kind of just like summarize it much kind of brutally. She worded it much better than I did, but basically like the mundane. Like I'm writing against just like, you know, doing like a 9 to 5, cooking, cleaning, eh, hanging out like with the family. Like I'm against just the ordinary lifestyle. That could be a whole thing. You could make a writing services around that, like trying to incorporate writing into your life to invigorate your life or something like that, you know.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's sort of statement or approach is like, what are you against? And then what are things you could do to show that you're against that that are also helping other writers. Because like when you look at a lot of the big companies, they often have that sort of parallel statement or that thing that they are operating against. Like for instance, like Apple is against the PC, right? They had that was the whole campaign. Like they would have the piece, literally have the guy representing the PC, and then the cool guy representing Apple, right? That was their whole campaign. You know, um, you can see it was all kinds of different examples. If you think of a product, especially like the more successful ones, they often have that thing that they're against. So, what is the thing that your writing is against? And then you can kind of start thinking about what are things I could offer to other writers that would demonstrate that.
Yeah, and so I really like that because it's a question that really forces you to kind of pigeonhole yourself,
You have to make a
but
choice. You have to make a choice.
but right, but it's like you're pigeonholing yourself in like it's like I'm saying that in a positive way because I think what happens with a lot of people, they're spreading themselves too thin across too many topics, across too many interests. And not to say that you can't explore entire, you can't be an entire person, explore whole things, but it's just to say that, like, there's a lot of people that, you might skip over the niche that is truly something that you can operate and be really really successful and flourishing, and you're subverting that to be like, I'm just a whole poet, and my poet is not my poetry is against not being poetry, and my poetry is for being poetry. I'm like, well, okay, you've kind of made some really general things here, but like that's people don't get interested
No,
in the generalities,
no.
right? Like if you're a doctor and somebody was just like, okay, like somebody was sick, they're probably gonna want to know what kind of doctor you are, right? Not because you're not a good doctor, but it's because, hey, if you're a dentist, then I'm like, I'm okay, then I'm gonna go to you if I need problems with my mouth or my teeth or something like that, but not if my appendix is about to burst. And so it's really important for you to really kind of specialize or to find something that you can specialize in, and then that way you're attracting people on those bases. Because I mean, even when we were talking about before, like when we're talking about brands and like having like a really strong brand, it's a lot easier, and dare I say it, it's like it's actually possible to expand out once you have a strong brand out to other things, as opposed to trying to concentrate a whole bunch of these smaller things into one brand later on down the line.
Hmm. Hmm. James saying that you truly
James, you're a
captured.
doctor?
No,
Wait,
I
hold
think
on.
I think it was a joke.
Well, I'm a doctor. My last
No, don't
patient
get me
was named.
wrong.
Wait, but he's a vet. Did he say his name? His last patient was named. Wait,
Oh, like fight like
or
James, we've gotten confused.
uh,
But you did capture you did capture with James. I think like just kind of like trying to capture everything. Like these are just questions. Like I think a lot of people are just like, I'm just gonna write the book. I'm just gonna write the book. I'm just the book, the book, the book, the book, the book, the right. But where's the direction? Where are we going? The book's not the end point. The book is one. The book is a vehicle to get you to your endpoint, but the book itself is not the endpoint. Yeah, yeah, we're on the same page. Just saying, not the doctor you want for your teeth, right? Got you. Um, and if this is something that you find to be difficult, I think one thing you can do is like you can even take like famous writers and try to make the statement for them. Like for instance, J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter.
it's a pretty successful.
So what if we had to like summarize her, J.K. the Harry Potter series is writing that is against. How would you finish that?
Writing against muggles. I, have never read any of the Harry Potter books.
That's a
so that's a good. That's
I have not read Harry Potter, so I would encourage.
Is Ajane still in? AJANA is still in here? No. Okay.
James, if you read Harry Potter, if you could let it, I have not read Harry Potter. For shame, I know.
I'm sorry, J.K. Rowling, if you're watching this out there. I truly and honestly, sincerely apologize.
Let's think of another like famous series.
Famous series,
book series, recent book series, or movie, or Well, let's get a
Hunger
project for you.
Games.
So, for instance, we do Hunger Games. Okay,
Okay.
so Hunger Games. I've read Hunger Games. Hunger Games. What is Hunger Games against?
I would say tyrannical dictators.
Okay, so like in
Uh,
terms of like kind of arguing, like going against like
High society lording
establishment,
over.
kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like Hunger Games writing against the establishment.
Yeah, I could say
You
that.
know,
You could say that, yeah.
um, and so that's something that is uniting all of the series. I think there's also kind of that like it's almost also like writing against almost like not like establishment like polished lifestyle um it's a society. I mean, yeah, things like that. um James bringing up Keats, bringing up my romanticism courses from college. So I'll be honest, I haven't read Keats in some time, so I wouldn't feel entirely out of it. I can give, if anyone's read, like for instance, Greg Pardlow. So Greg Pardlow, I would say, is writing against poetry that is 100% accessible, because he's bringing in all kinds of like mythology. He's bringing in educate. He's assuming that if you're reading his work, you have one familiarity with poetry and things like that. You could look at the other side. So, for instance, like Rupi Kaur. Rupi Kaur.
every other stream, we're like, or Ruby Carr. You could write good poetry, or
But she knows. But this is the thing. She knows her audience. She's a great writer for people looking for her. You know, like
there you go.
it's like she is writing.
Shout out Ruby Carr if you're watching
Rupi
this.
Kaur, like, you keep coming up. Like it is poetry that is against it. How would you phrase it? Like it's poetry that's against the idea that poetry is for the select. You know what I mean? Like it's like anyone can be a poet.
I would say that.
I mean, you can go even deeper because I mean, how does she? I haven't really read. If anyone here has read like Milk and Honey and stuff like that, let us know. But like she got her like I feel like she first got big because she was female poet writing about like periods and stuff like that. Like I feel like that's how she kind of like got her launch, and build up like her Instagram. You know, so poetry that is against academic male gaze or something like that. You know, um, something like that. Like, so this is kind of just the exercise I would encourage you to take. Just kind of like think about that, because once you have that, then everything that you do for a time, and we can branch out later. Matthias mentioned this, that like, you know, we can branch out later, but we have to start focused, because like if I write a poetry book, that one poetry book is about, you know, like my dog, but then my next poetry book is my love for like trucks and things like that. I'm making it really hard for my audience in terms of my ecosystem, because those are two very different groups.
Yeah, you know something that's interesting, that, and I feel like, okay, so yeah, I feel like this analogy works. One of the things I've been studying a lot is building power slash magic systems in your work, right? Like in like your script, or like even your book and your short
Mhm.
films and things like
Mhm.
that. And the really difficult thing about writing in those like power and magic systems is the best ones are ones that explore one power being able to like, and you're
Mhm.
typically flowing through your main character, right? Like your main character is how you're essentially exploring the world and exploring the upper echelons of this power system. But typically it's like you're looking at this one power being explored in these different facets. It's much better to say to have this power, this character who's been able to explore and go deeper into the usage
Mhm.
of this one power than have this character who just has this random assortment of all these powers that
Mhm.
you can't really wrangle in. And a really good example of this is uh I would even say something like in in I'm gonna kind of delve into like some like Marvel here, but in what is it, Doctor Strange, in the latest Doctor Strange movie, there's like Doctor Strange. He showed like one of the really big issues that a lot of people had is that he showcases a lot of different powers and abilities, and the problem is that if you if you're me and you're thinking about Doctor Strange, like when Infinity War came out, one of the things that a lot of people were asking is like, why didn't he just use the sling ring to cut off Thanos' arm and be done with it, right? Because and the problem that happened with Doctor Strange is like the problem that happens with like anything that has this, and Marvel is even worse because not only do you have Doctor Strange who have just has dozens of powers,
Mhm.
but then you have dozens and dozens of heroes who also have dozens
Mhm.
of powers, right? So it's hard to keep track.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
what happens now is like now you have this hero who's like you're like you had one ability that could have ended this entire thing, but
Mhm.
nobody thought to
Mhm.
really explore it deeply. And if they would have
Mhm.
explored like that power could be an a huge
Mhm.
deal in that universe, right?
Mhm.
If you just used it right, if you used it well. And so kind of the same thing when it comes to kind of having a really direct focus that you're able to then explore the deeper echelons of that focus. Now
Mhm.
you have now you know exactly what your niche is, you know how your niche operates, but you can understand, okay, like my niche might be able to bring me over into this space and I can use it even better, or I can implement it in this space as opposed to kind of only using the
Mhm.
surface levels of all these niches.
I think it's interesting you bring up Marvel too because like like when they do the Avengers, Marvel can't start with the Avengers.
It's a problem with
You
DC.
can't start with you have to build up. And it's painful and it's slow, okay? Because you have to build up the individual character. You have to build up Spider-Man. You have to build up the Hulk. You have to build up this hero. You have to build up this hero. And each one takes several movies and it takes time. But what you can reach a point where you can bring in other things. I think another example is like for instance the band like for instance like Daft Punk. Like Daft Punk um when Daft Punk first comes out, everyone just associates them like, dance, electronic music, dance, electronic music, dance, electronic music. Even later on, their later albums still dance, electronic music, but they're starting. What did they start doing? They start featuring other artists from other genres of music and
Yeah.
incorporating them into their music. So it's like the expansion can happen, but it takes time. Like, okay, so James is asking the relevant question. So James asking,
Question.
I thought you were going to say it.
Ugh,
Question.
what question? That says it. Question.
What happens when you get tired of that niche? Yeah, uh-huh.
Ooh,
And are you saying you have
it's
to stick with
tough.
that niche forever once you've known to write that kind of thing? I'm not saying you have to stick with it forever.
So here's the thing that's tough. Here's the thing that's tough. So like, let's say you are somebody who bakes, because like this wouldn't even be a question in like in any product, wouldn't be even be a question, right? And I think that's kind of what you have to kind of try to put yourself in the mind of when it comes to your work. So if I have a product which is like, let's say I'm a bakery and my number one item is this special donut that it's like everybody's like, oh my god, this place, this donut is amazing. Now let's say like I've mastered making that donut. It's like I'm really really great at it, and I'm like, man, I want to be really a lot more creative and I want to do other things. Then you probably want to figure out a way to automize the making of the donut, right? Like I want to either maybe it's not me that's making the donut, maybe I've taught the recipe to one of my employees, and my
Mhm.
employees is me. But it's like I think that one of the things about a niche, or in like the following behind a niche, is that like you know again, artists are a little bit different, and so I would make the argument that you have a little bit more room to kind of switch up and kind of do your own thing. If people just are following you that much as an artist, like I
Mhm.
I think that right now, if Kanye West never rapped, like he had an album where he didn't rap, he had an album where he just sang, and like people flocked to it because him as a brand was so strong that it does
He
like it
built
didn't
up to that.
it didn't matter. Yeah, that's what I'm
He
saying.
built
But it
up.
didn't
He
it
built
didn't
up to
matter.
it.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
But even so, but if the first three albums, like him being tired, it feels just like if after the first album he said, I take that back because College Dropout was great enough to where if he would dropped 808s after it, he would have still had right. But in order for it to have the kind of appeal that it did, he had these three albums that preceded it. He had all these other production features, all the other features that preceded it that made ingesting a singing album make sense because or not even make sense of like I'm willing to at least see
Mhm.
what that's about.
Yeah.
And it's not like he stopped rapping altogether, like he still rapped later on. Which just to say that I don't think that you are pigeonholed as far as like the only thing you can ever do is your niche. But I think especially if it like are you stopping it because you're tired of it or are you stopping it because it's not successful? Because if it's successful and it's building and it has momentum, because if something has like momentum and it still has some real velocity and some
Mhm.
trajectory, I'm like I don't see the reason to stop a good thing. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe you evolve it, maybe you like add to it, but you know, it really stretching that to its limits.
It's
It
it's
seems like there's
risky.
some
It's a
positives.
risky thing. I mean, it's why businesses there's a growth stage with business, right? Growth at the beginning, you find you're searching for your thing, you're exploding, and then over time, you get comfortable and you innovate less. Um, it's a risk. I think it's the same thing like musicians. Like when a musician, if a group releases an album that's drastically different than anything else they've done, they're able to find a new audience, but a lot of times the old audience rebels against it. They're like, "Why did you do that? This makes no sense." And musicians do that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? It does. It does. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but I think on the other hand, like for instance, if you think about your favorite music acts and you look at most of their albums, you could probably immediately tell the music is by them
Yeah,
throughout. It's the same thing with like painters. You could probably tell a Warhol painting as a Warhol painting. You could tell a landscape artist. Why are they called a landscape artist? Because they paint landscapes. That's what they do. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's different landscapes. But like I think you see this over and over again, where people find the thing and then they stick with it. They find the thing and you stick with it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah.
And then as you get bigger, then you can start opening things up. So James brings in the question here, which is, what if the donut guy started making necklaces and was selling the gemstones? So there's so many variables to this, right? Because like, how successful is the donut business? Um, and then James, the follow up question to this: does he juggle the two or just switch? Well, I mean, I don't know. It depends. Like, what if you're making? What if you have your donut shop, but then you become famous for your merch because you're making necklaces and gemstones that have things to do with donuts?
Yeah.
You know?
It's also like I would also I, I think the nature of diverse and the nature of the mission of diverse kind of makes this question kind of like a given, but it's like what are you doing this for? What is the
Mhm.
reason? So if I was making donuts just because I like making donuts and there's no other incentive, like maybe it doesn't matter to me that the donuts blew up. It doesn't matter to me that people love the donuts because I'm like I was doing it in a because I just loved it and a byproduct of it was and I don't care about the byproduct.
Mhm.
Then like okay, maybe do whatever makes you happy in that regard. But again, if you're here and if you're like attentive and if you're like really rocking with it, and again, this is kind of bringing it out of the analogy, then
Mhm.
you're you have a there's a your poetry is or your work is something that you're proud of and that you enjoy doing, but it's also there's a method and there's some directionality behind it, which is to feed yourself. You don't want this is not just something that you're doing just so it can kind of sit on the shelf and you're just fine with it. So kind of I think when it comes to like if you start making the gemstones, it's like okay, well, did you when you switched those directions, what happened? Like, did the gemstones blow up?
Mhm.
Did those become your prize product and the
Right.
product that is really driving you, or what is the? What is the reason?
Look at like successful, like, or people we view as being successful, like business guys as well. We don't just see this in the art industry and things like that. We see this in other areas as well. Like Elon Musk, he doesn't start with Tesla. He doesn't start with SpaceX. He starts with PayPal. He bought it or whatever, and then took it to, like, he grew it, and this takes time. So I think one of the things is you can juggle too. We're not saying like don't do it. If you really have a passion, you really want to like do different things. You're like, no, I want to make my first poem book about cats, and then my second one's going to be about the death of my grandmother. Go for that. Do that.
What's up, voice? That was the cat saying.
Or if you're tired of making gemstones and you want to switch to painting, do that. But why do we only, let me rephrase, it's really hard to get something going. It's really hard to build traction for something, for one thing. And if you're going to try to do two, especially if you've never been able to take one thing to the level that you want it to do, you're going to double your workload on top of your family and your job, in your social life, in your sleep, in your health. Like, this takes so much work.
But also there's this what is it called? Like the Matthew, like the Pareto distribution. It's like it's gonna take infinitely more work to go from, or not infinitely. It's gonna take a lot more work to go from 0 to 1 than it'll take you from to 1 to 2, 100%. And then from 2 to 3. Then like each step is gonna get easier. And I think that whatever work that you did to get from 0 to 1 on the donuts, right? Whatever that work was, it could have easily failed, right? Like any endeavor that you start in probably should fail, right? The likelihood of it failing is probably is higher than the likelihood of you like doing great with it, right? And you're increasing the likelihood if you're just working hard at it and you're applying yourself. So I'm like, imagine being like, okay, I'm increasing my likelihood of this donuts thing because I applied myself and I did all this, and now I'm kind of operating on this higher level where I'm still devoting a lot of time to it, but it's easier to get a larger return out of it. And then being like, I'm going to split that time now with trying to get this whole other thing started. And it's possible that it works out. It's possible that you get some really good results out of it. But again, it's not incredibly likely. And I would say that I wouldn't sacrifice the thing that is already working and going well for the thing that is not likely. Like, it's easy to be like, well, I'm willing to just devote myself to something to make it work. But now that you have something working, I'm going to sacrifice it for something that I don't even know if this is going to be the thing that pans out for me.
I think that what you said about the energy stuff is so, like, for instance, for YouTube, for my teaching business, I have a main channel on YouTube. I made a second channel. The main channel, to get to where it's at, so the main channel is about 70, maybe like 7,800 subscribers right now, and it's taking a ton of videos. Like, it's probably taking about 1,000 videos. I made a lot of videos. I made a second channel, an offshoot channel, also related to teaching, that's like focusing on a single exercise. In 1 year, we've already reached half the subscribers that my main channel had. But if I hadn't spent the time building up the first channel, it would have taken me infinitely longer to make that second channel grow, because I have a great idea of what works, what didn't work, and things like that. Also, I'm able to shift people from that first channel onto the second channel.
Yeah.
So it's able to feed off of each other. So,
and then just factoring in that if you're going into a different field, like, you're starting from 0 from that field. You know what I mean? So like all the stuff that Jeff had as far as like the information and the know-how and the mechanics, all that stuff is now you have to figure out the mechanics of this industry, of this field. Yeah.
That's literally what we're going through right now. So for instance, all the stuff I've done for my teaching business, we're combined, we're monetized on YouTube. We're pulling in about 500,000, 600,000 impressions a month. It's not carrying over to Diverses. Why is it not carrying over to Diverses? Because it's a new field. I am doing the thing that I'm telling you not to do, because I have my main teaching business and I'm slowly breaking into more of the poetry, like sliding my focus more to the poetry stuff.
Yeah, but it's also I think one of the things that is it's because they're heavily transferable skills, because even while the topics aren't the same, the mechanics of like what you learned from YouTube from one field
For sure. No,
transfers.
there's definitely
You know what I mean?
for sure.
So there's, which is just to say that like I would say like if somebody said, "Hey, I have one YouTube channel and I've gotten it going. Should I start another YouTube channel?" It's like, yeah. I mean, I would say like, yeah. But if like I have one YouTube channel and I got it going, and let's say I've got my YouTube channel up to 500,000 subscribers, and I want to keep that thing going, but I also I want to start taking some night classes to be a mechanic. It's like, well, like. And let's assume that they've never tried to fix a vehicle before. It's like both of those things are going to take an incredible amount of focus and intensity and devotion, that maybe if your end goal is like, hey, I just want to figure out how I can really push myself and get the most capital and really be able to like kind of make a difference and kind of drive my purpose, it's like, okay, you probably should choose one of these and really push it. And again, it's going to be you're not going to be able, like, most people that start a YouTube net are not going to get 500,000. They're not going to get 10,000. They're not going to get, most of them will not get 1,000, right? So it's like you already have far exceeded the odds. If you're at 500,000 on YouTube, it's like if you should be able to figure out a way to really seriously be able to even outside of the YouTube monetization. Like, what can you, if you have 500,000 people that are locked in with you on making videos? There's an entire myriad of things that you should be able to do with that.
If you're relying on ad revenue, you have a business problem. That is whack. So I think, to answer James' question here, so I guess this is the question I'm needing to ask. Then, how does one go from being a jack of all trades to a master of at least one? There's a couple
change
things.
Your name from Jack.
You're Fido. I think so a couple things too. Oh, James already has the answer. Oh, okay. But I'm still gonna roll. How's one go from being a jack of all trades to a master of at least one? You need to decide which one do you want to go all in on. And the sooner you can do that, the better. Like, for instance, for me, like, if I could go back and make a choice, I might consider, instead of doing like teaching as my business, instead pursuing the poetry stuff sooner, potentially. But that's kind of hard to say too, because the teaching stuff is what right now is able to kind of pay my bills until I'm able to get the poetry stuff in a way to do it. So it's kind of, you never know. But if you're trying to go from doing everything to just one thing, you have to pick the one thing that you want to commit to long term. We're not talking about tomorrow. We're talking about 10 years from now. What do you want to be known for? This goes back to what we talked earlier. What are you against? Because when you can find out what you're against, that lets you really know what you're for. Again, the verses, our perspective is we are full poets against starving artists. We are against that notion. We believe that our art can be something that sustains us.
I think one of the things that kind of the mindset that you have, even with the question, because like that's a good question, and it's a good thing to really think about, because it's like, maybe the reason that you are a jack of all trades, or the reason that you're not a master of one trade, or not even maybe, it's more than likely the reason that you're not a master of one trade is because you are a jack of all trades. Like those two identities, it's incredibly hard for those two things to really kind of coexist. One of the things that is a really good analogy for this. I don't know if anybody out there has seen this. The show Avatar. Have you watched Avatar: The Last Airbender? The show. Okay, good. It's so good. But one of the things that you realize on Avatar: Last Airbender, there's this. So kind of a branch off view. There's four elements that people bend in the world. Like in this world, there's four elements that people bend. It's fire, water, air, earth, right? And so typically everybody is divided into these, the nations of those elements. And so you have a fire nation, you have a water nation, you have an earth nation, and you have an the air bending nomads, right? And so you have all these people that are kind of fairly like kind of separated. They and whatever, like the whole backstory, the history of it doesn't really matter. But one thing you should know is that there is this one person that's reincarnated every, like when they die, they're reincarnated into a different nation. They're called the Avatar, right? The Avatar is a person that they're born, no matter what nation they're born into, they then are able to, they're able to bend all four elements, but it's only one person, right? Nobody else can bend all four elements. So the Avatar is always really strong, right? The Avatar is always like a pretty strong, one like the strongest character, right? But the Avatar is never the best bender at any one of those elements. Like in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang was a great was a great like let's any one of the elements. Actually, you know what? The best example of this is earthbending. Aang Aang is the Avatar, so he should be an incredible earthbender, and he was a really great earthbender. But his teacher, Toph, was hyper concentrated in earthbending, so much so that she was blind, right? And like as far as like a characterization, like a blind earthbender is like it's just a really brilliant kind of concept, because it's like somebody who is incredibly and intrinsically more reliant on the earth and the connectivity to the earth, right? And like she uses like echolocation in order to see, like the way that she sees is by being connected to the earth and being planted in the ground, right? And that's how she's able to understand her land, but she's able to see a lot better because she's like hyper concentrated, and she's the first metal bender. It's like, so there's all these things about this person that, yeah, well, maybe I'm not a jack of all trades, man. I'm not the Avatar. I don't have all these elements, but I'm hyper focused on this one element. And because I'm hyper focused on this one element, I'm a better earthbender than Avatar. And again, kind of bridge it out to, naturally what we're talking about here, the concept of, you want to be a master, you want to be a jack of all trades, because you want to be able to get into a whole bunch of things. But possibly the reason that you're not a master of any one thing is because you're spread so thin across these other things, these other elements, these other kind of activities that, they're you only have 24 hours in a day.
Mhm.
You only got so much energy. And if somebody else is somewhere like, well, I'm gonna I'm going to go as hard as I possibly can towards this one specific goal, and you're like, well, I'm running 4 races at once. It's like, okay, you're gonna get a fourth the distance that I am.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go anywhere in those other three that you're in, but I'm gonna go farther
Mhm.
than the one me and you were competing in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think also with the Avatar too, that it's not like you're born knowing all four. You still have to learn
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
You
yeah.
still have to train.
But other people don't have the capacity to,
Right.
like an earthbender, somebody that's just born into an earthbender is not going to be able to learn how to
Mhm.
do air bending,
Mhm.
right, or water or
Right.
fire bending. But
Yeah.
the Avatar, if they're born into Avatar, they're born into the air
Mhm.
nomads, and he's gonna learn air bending first, and then he's gonna be able to learn all the other
Mhm.
ones.
Yeah.
Another thing about Avatar, I'm joking.
So we'll probably have to close out soon, but I want to make sure everyone's leaving us with some very practical steps. So again, the title of this video was how to find readers by helping writers, because I think that whatever you're deciding, you want to also be kind of thinking about how can what you're doing be of service to writers. Like for instance, you're writing your book. Cool. How is that helping other people? It could be entertainment. Entertainment can be a source of help because people seek entertainment from things. You could be teaching them things. You could be assisting them with a problem that they have. But this goes back again to what are you writing against? Because once you answer that, like um again, if like for instance, if I'm Rupi Kaur and I'm writing against, traditional male gaze on academic male gaze on poetry. And I'm not saying Ruby cards. I'm not familiar enough. So let's just use that for right now as an example, though. If that's your mission, if that's what you're against, then you can start really asking yourself more about how can I create services and things around that aim. I can make the book, but I can do other things too. Maybe, for instance, I can hold little workshops for like female, like kids, little girls, and things like that. Like targeting them for workshops. To like for empowerment and stuff like that. For us, just to give an example for us. So, for instance, we're creating opportunities to promote voices, especially like underrated. Well, yes, definitely underrated, but also like underrepresented voices as well. A lot of the guests that we bring in, again, poets of color, writers of color. We're writers of color ourselves, so that's something that we're really trying to focus on. But we're talking about things related to craft, but we're also talking about things related to business. And things like that. So everything we're doing. So for instance, the chapbook workshop, this is something that you can grow in your craft. This is also something that you can use to promote your writing business. It's a physical product you can sell. Other things we've done, we've hosted the residency. Why did we host a residency? We hosted a residency to develop writers, but then to also promote their work as well.
For sure.
We created a poetry journal, The Collective. What's the goal? We're promoting underrepresented writers and things like that. So everything we do is with that aim. Again, I've said it multiple times. We are full poets against starving artists. We are finding ways to take poets and put them in positions where they can learn more about their craft, but also learn more about the business of writing so that they can survive off of it.
Yeah, that's I think one of the things that is a really kind of differentiating factor between, somebody that is going to have that kind of focus or somebody that's not going to have that kind of focus is that, if Diversus does a program that, and they don't like the name, the name Diversus is not on the programming, you could still be like, oh, that's something Diversus might do. Right. Like you should be able to identify the product by the traits, right? So you should be able to say like, oh, like I'm not really like, oh, I haven't heard of that before, man. That sounds like something they might do. That's right inside of their wheelhouse. So like go ahead.
I have a great example. It was like I forget, I was listening to Christo from the future. So one example that he gave is, think of Nike. If Nike opened a hotel, you could probably imagine what that hotel would look like. It'd probably be something a little trendy, probably some athletes involved in the marketing and stuff like that. You can imagine where the swoosh symbols and things would be.
Really high scale gym, hotel.
There would be a huge. It would have like a huge indoor pool, maybe like Olympics. It would have.
Yeah,
you can imagine it. Let's do the other way around. Hilton designs a shoe. What's that shoe look like? I don't know. Who has a stronger brand?
Oh, I guess. Well, it kind of depends because it's like I feel like because Hilton is not a shoe brand, so it's like if Hilton made a shoe, they'd be going outside of their, which I guess
if Nike made a water bottle, I know what that water bottle would look like.
Yeah, but that's
if Nike made a school, I know what that school would look. If Nike made whatever, I know what it would look like. I don't know anything about it.
Sign a poet to a shoe. Has a poet had a Nike yet? A poet needs a
Nike. Hey, we're open to the discussion. So just saying.
Talk to us.
So it's like Hilton is like a big company. You know the name. I don't know anything about their values. I don't know what they do. I just know it's a hotel chain that's maybe a little bit more expensive than other chains, but not the most expensive.
That's true.
Yeah. The problem is it doesn't have a story. Nike has a story. Nike, you see them and you think, athletics, you see that phrase, just do it. It's just like, I'm just going to go get it. You know what I mean? It's that sense of like, achievement in pursuing and like not stopping. Hilton doesn't have a story.
That's true.
You go there to sleep.
Yeah, and but also like the Hilton is not something that you're going to collect. So you don't have Hilton is not a products facing company. Like Nike is a products facing company. There might be a lot of things about Nike that are not the product, but the product is the shoe, right? So like there's a lot of other products, but like if the shoe fails, everything else fails, right? Which is just to say that I think that I think you're right in that Nike's brand is stronger, but I think it's because it's the recognizable, because of the industry that Nike has at its forefront, which is the brand Nike, which is the shoe. It's like it's easily transferable over to other things, where in which the Hilton is like, I'm not gonna have a Hilton in my closet, right? I'm not gonna have like a Hilton. I'm not gonna walk out the house. I'm not gonna put a Hilton, take my Hiltons off to go. You know what I'm saying? So like you're constantly reminded of the brand, and the brand is like a status symbol. Hilton is, but the brand is a status symbol that you can flex a lot more often, right? Like you can flex the Nike brand all the time by just putting the Nike brand on and walk. Like you're wearing the brand, where it's like Hilton. It's like you're going to the Hilton.
Where you're choosing to, you're trying to get that symbol as big make it as possible. So in Jane's saying that, like, yeah, Hilton has stories. I'm sure. I mean, every company, you're around long enough, you're going to have stories. But how well do your customers know or people who even aren't? So how well do the people who aren't your customers know your story? I don't have Nikes. There are no Nikes in my house, but I know them. So but it's not even really important like Nike. It's about what is the brand of your
Nike Hilton's gonna go on like a brand war.
Like what is your writing? What that's the thing that we need to be considering. So for instance, again, with like the verses, the story aspect is really important. We're against that concept of, again, starving artists, especially for like underrepresented voices. Everything we do, you can see that. What about for your stuff? Do people know that?
Yeah, and are you considering that in really all the moves that you're making, right? Because I think a lot of times it's like it's not even just it's a really good kind of a transferable kind of theme when you're talking about theme in like either your poem or like even when you're talking about like movies, right? So like the theme of like breaking free from the chains, or like breaking free from control. Like that's essentially the themes of the Matrix, because the Matrix is control and you're breaking free from those controls. Every character in the Matrix is playing through or is deciding making their own decided decision within that theme, right? Whether it be directly interacting with the theme, because like everybody in Zion is free, so they chose to leave the Matrix, or whether it's people that are in the Matrix, and every one of those people can be a pawn for the Matrix. They can be, you know what I mean? So like everything in the Matrix is expressing the theme that they're trying to get across. And so like, when we're talking about your work, when we're talking about your online presence, when you're talking about like, the kind of gigs that you do, right? So because it can even be that like there's I know like there's artists that if I'm an artist and I'm like, well, my entire brand is about supporting vegan, the vegan lifestyle, and I'm the vegan poet, and I'm the poet that does vegan stuff. I'm like, I'm not about to have like like, oh, like, do you want to perform at this I don't know, Oscar Mayer event? Like, no, probably not. Because like I'm not gonna to be clear, there are opportunities for like Oscar Mayer. Like, I don't know they're not putting on like poetry shows, but they're putting on events where poets could probably come in, and they could hire a poet to, or they can hire a poet to talk about their brand, right? They can hire, like, they can have you a part of the marketing. Like, but would you, if your entire brand is like, I'm the vegan poet, like, it ruins your brand to be like, oh, well, I'm doing this commercial for, because I'm doing it, like, maybe Oscar Mayer, they're offering me $10,000, but I'm like, man, you're about to ruin your brand for
The vegan poet, by the way, is a great. I like. There's probably someone out there that does that. And if there's not, there might be a niche for that.
Nah, man, you're welcome.
Yes, well, you can't. But I think that's another idea about, as you're deciding the direction you're moving towards. What do you say no to? Because that really defines it so much as well. Because because you have to be able to say no to things.
Ooh, that's a good, because it's like, what are you against? It's like,
exactly, you have to say no to something.
There's, because once now, because again, now it even makes it easier. There's a there's like this film channel that I watch, but like, we're talking about themes, and we're talking about things like, oh, it's actually, so they actually dropped a video today. I gotta send it to you. Like, I think you'd find it really interesting. But he's like he's this film channel that I follow, but it's super interesting because he was just talking about, like, once you figure out your theme and you figure out what you're against, everything else in your thing, it's so easy. It's now it's a clear trajectory, because now it's like, you don't have to worry, you don't have to think, man, should I take this gig? Because a lot of people, they get offered the bag, they're going to take the gig because it's like, okay, I'm a poet who does poems. But it's like, man, you're not even regular. Or you could be somebody who's like, and I think this happens a lot more often, right? You'll have somebody who is their faith is like kind of like the driving force behind their poems, right? Their work. And it's one thing to, for like, if you're just a person who has a faith and is also a poet, but it's another thing if your faith is what informs all of your work. Like, it is your work, right? And so if that is the thing that is your work, then you're not going to do something that's antithetical to your faith. It's like somebody was like, well, this is like against your faith, like, but we need you to do this. Like, oh, you're probably not going to do it for a couple different reasons, right. But one of which being like, hey, that's completely outside of my, not even outside, it's antithetical, it's against my brand, and I don't want to be active in doing something against my brand, because like, then I have nothing to stand on. Now the people that are following me, that are rocking with my work, that really love my work, like, all those people, they're like, oh man, they're doing that, like, like, you're doing something that is against the core value that they followed you for.
What are you saying no to? And that's 100% right. It allows you to really form everything. Just want a quick shout out to James. We'll see you later, man. Thanks for stopping by, James.
Get out here, James.
For a long time. We appreciate that. It informs everything. It informs things you post on social media. It informs the collections you make. It informs, again, the services. This is the big thing. I want you, it's late, we'll head out, but this is the thing I really want you to be considering, is what sorts of services can you make around writing that further that mission you have for your own work, that thing that you're against, which also means that thing that you're pushing for as well. What can you make for other writers that takes them in that direction? I think that's something I would challenge you to begin thinking about, whether it's a workshop, a physical product, a class, a video, a podcast, whatever it is. Get to work.
I believe in you.
All right, I'm going to close this out. Matthias, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Of course.
You guys take care. Have a good day, good night, good afternoon. We will see you guys later. Next to Versus Live next Tuesday.